So I'm going to go out on a limb and say the two most meaningful games are Alabama and Georgia on Tennessee's schedule that make this list. Where do they rank among the most meaningful games in all of college football? And my goodness, I would hate to put together this list because going back to the national perspective discussion we had, you're going to leave a bunch of people off. But where do these two games rank? They should be top 10. They should be top 10.
Okay, in all of college football, I agree with actually this list. Tennessee, Alabama's top 25. I don't think Tennessee, Alabama's top 10. And it can't be top 10 anymore because it's not a divisional game. Now, after this year, it could get back to top 10 when there's no more divisions, but there's still divisions this year. So with Alabama in the West, it's top 25 because it's not as much of a direct impact. So I got Tennessee, Alabama in the top 25. I got Tennessee, Georgia in the top 5. That's where I'm going with these two.
Okay, and where are they actually on the list that was done by 247 Sports?
So the list by 247 Sports is right where I was doing. They have Tennessee, Alabama at 21, and they have Tennessee, Georgia at number 4. Now, ahead of Tennessee, Georgia is Michigan, Penn State, LSU, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan. I can't really argue with any of those, can you?
No, but I am going to – here's what I'll do. I'll go ahead and start it with 4 downs because I'm going to argue one of the points that you made because I still happen to think that Tennessee, Alabama is pretty significant for a significant reason or two. 4 downs brought to you by Craft Treats. Use that promo code off the hook. Again, that promo code off the hook. 4 downs is now.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
So one of the things that you said throws me off a little bit. I'm not totally disagreeing with you, but I'm kind of disagreeing with you because you talk about which is the bigger game between the two. I think it's easy to say Georgia. I think it's very easy to say that that's the SEC East. However, what would 2 wins in a row mean for the Vols over Alabama? So this particular year, what would be the bigger win? I'm going to give you the easy one, okay? Because I know you're going to go Georgia, and you're probably right. But Cooper, set us up for first down.
Coop here, first down.
So you want to go Georgia. Tell me why in 10 seconds or less because you're pretty much right.
Because it's an SEC East game. That's all I need to say.
Okay. I'm going to say Alabama because I think Georgia very well could be going off the rails. I think that with the discipline issues, I've seen this before up close under Philip Fulmer, and it doesn't seem to be going away. And it's tough to get that back, and sometimes you never get that back. So I think Georgia could be going off the rails. I'm not particularly fond of the Mike Bobo hire that we talked about. I think that if you beat Alabama for the second year in a row, that you made a real statement. If you beat them in Tuscaloosa, you made a real statement. Either are on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 wins. I mean, that's a monstrous win. So I'm not at all saying that the Georgia win wouldn't be huge. It absolutely would be. And it's at home, and you would probably have the goalpost back in the river, in the Tennessee River and all that. And that's great and well and good. And I appreciate all that. But to beat Alabama after their run, you might be part of the reason that Nick Saban says, I'm not sure I want to do this any longer. Okay, that happened with Steve Spurrier in Tennessee in 2001. So if you could push Nick Saban out the door, you would agree that would be the bigger win, right?
Well, the funniest part about Tennessee pushing Steve Spurrier out the door was they thought the SEC's was about to be theirs for the next decade, and they still haven't won an SEC title since Spurrier retired or resigned from Florida. And
well, that's true. But if you can push Nick Saban out the door and Georgia is on a disciplined slide downhill, which I believe to be the case, I could be proven wrong, then did I at least make a decent argument why Alabama would be the more meaningful win in 2023? Can you roll with that at least?
I think you made a better argument for Georgia being the more meaningful win, honestly.
Oh, gosh.
And I'll tell you why. You're talking about all these issues with if Tennessee loses at Alabama this year on the road to Alabama, it's not a big deal of a loss. If they lose to Georgia at home, and here's the what you're saying means they almost need to beat Georgia because they've got to cash in on Georgia sliding as a program. They've got to beat them and take advantage of the issues in front of them. So the same way I said last year, Tennessee has to beat LSU in Florida. I said they had to because you're not going to get a better opportunity to beat LSU in Florida than in 2022. And they took advantage of those. And based on what you're saying, Dave, if Georgia's sliding, well, Tennessee needs to push them further down, and the way to push them down is to beat them.
Okay, fair. Twisted my argument. I'll give you that. Second down. What down is it, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Thank you, Coop. The bigger rival right now, aside from what game they want to win, has Georgia supplanted Alabama short term as the biggest rival between the two because Tennessee has now beaten Alabama and Georgia appears by many to be the next dominant dynasty in college sports?
No,
bigger rival right now.
Funny enough, I would say no, only because Tennessee Georgia is not really a rival yet. Tennessee's got to be competitive to make it a rival, and right now it's Georgia and then Tennessee. And here's a crazy, but I will say this: if you care about history and historical perspective, there's one reason to care more about the Georgia game, which is Alabama's so far ahead of the rest of the SEC when it comes to history. That doesn't matter. Georgia surpassed Tennessee this past year in number of SEC titles. So Tennessee's fallen to third all-time in number of SEC titles. Georgia leads the all-time series 27-23. See, Tennessee could care about leading the all-time series with Georgia. They're never going to catch Alabama in yours or my lifetime in terms of all-time series or SEC titles or national titles. But they can catch Georgia. And so I think that's where it's a big deal.
Fair enough. Well, I plan to live to 100, so there's that. All right. What down is it, Cooper?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
All right. Which game is Tennessee more likely to win? Alabama
and Georgia. You know what? The home and away, you would say they're more likely to beat Georgia, but I'm just not. I'm down on Alabama this year. I really am. And so I think they're more likely to beat Alabama.
I think they're more likely to beat Alabama because they're down, but I'm closer than you because I think this is a revenge type of game. And Nick Saban, even before he had elite talent, was a master motivator. And I'm going to use a Cowboys reference, which you might hate from time to time, but Jimmy Johnson was an incredible motivator. I think of him very similar to Nick Saban. He knows how to push buttons on all the guys. Some guys need the harsh treatment. Some guys need you to be a little bit nicer when they have a bad practice. You just kind of give them a look. So I think that they will be motivated to the hilt that week in practice. No, it doesn't matter when the game kicks off, I know, but they'll be motivated to the hilt in the offseason to say Tennessee's never going to beat Alabama again. We're the Crimson Tide. So I do believe that Alabama will be an incredibly tough matchup, obviously, and they're on the road. So I think that'll be the tougher win between the two to get just because of the motivational factor. And I think Nick Saban's special at that, almost as special as evaluating talent and recruiting. Which down is it, Coop?
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
What's the most important aspect in each of those games for Tennessee to pull what we think will be an upset? The most important aspect of each of those games. I'll start first with Georgia. And Elias points out that Georgia matchup is terrible. It is because they do the exact opposite as Tennessee. So I think it's the running game. I think Tennessee has to be able to run the football with a pretty good offensive line. I think that's the most important aspect of Georgia. I think the most important aspect of, and you could say this about every game, and I'm not trying to cop out here, just don't make mistakes on the road against Alabama. And I don't hate that matchup at all. I think it's a tough matchup. You just can't go out there. I'm not even talking about interception fumbles. Let's bring it back to Joe Milton. Call me a Joe Milton hater if you want to. But Joe Milton can't be missing wide open guys in the Alabama game on the road. That can't happen.
Yeah, so for Alabama, I'm going to be a little more cliche than even you. I think it's straight up about Joe Milton because I think Alabama is going to be playing ball control. They're going to be focused on the game, so I don't think they'll make as many mistakes. So I think from that perspective, Tennessee's going to actually have to beat Alabama, and I don't mean they can't beat Alabama the way they beat Florida in '98. You know what I mean? They're going to actually have to beat them by outplaying them, and so that comes to Joe Milton, like you said, hitting on his throws. I still think it's actually the passing game against Georgia too, and that is, I think that it's the receivers. They got to be able to beat those Georgia defensive backs. And last year it was raining. Cedric Tillman they were trying to force it to Tillman when he had a hurt ankle, kind of messed things up a little bit. But the real exposure was the problem was Tennessee's receivers. Georgia put their cornerbacks on them one-on-one, man, and just stuck with them down the sidelines. So I think that the biggest key in that game is it's actually just one question. Who's going to win the speed matchups, the foot races? Georgia's cornerbacks or Tennessee's receivers?